This is the 1 hour capsule.
Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it.
Hello, and we're on episode 7, I believe, at this point. We have today our guest, Farah Rodrigues, and co host Tierno. And today we are going to be delving into human trafficking, among other things, as we usually do. But I want to say, first of all, welcome, Farah.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
So you can tell us many things, but first of all, the interesting thing, and I think I'm okay to share that I've known Farah for a good number of years.
hmm
We've met, I think, a few times over that course of time.
hmm
And sometimes as things happen, I noticed that Farah had a story on her Facebook, and I looked at it, and it said something related to human trafficking, and then like human trafficking, as I told Farah, it's it's a topic of interest for me. Written
hmm
about it in the past, and I think it's something that the world needs to become more take grasp on as
Yeah.
to what a problem it is.
hmm
Even last night, I was talking to friends because we were talking about how like society, we like to believe that society has been advancing and has become better because you would think you learn from history and this and that. We talk about like slavery, for example, something that
Yes.
we like to say, oh, it's a thing of the past, and
Yeah.
but then it's like when you start to look at like slavery, human trafficking, slavery, and all those things, like
Yes.
it's happening, like it's happening now.
It is.
It's not
It
so
really
much a thing of
is.
the past.
hmm
um eh, and we can get into all topics like that, but also like if you think about war, um authoritarian regimes, like empires that disseminate people
Totally.
in a bloody way. And if you talk about like the time of the Spanish Inquisition, we talk about like all the wars, World War I, World War II. It's like like there's a lot of bad stuff happening now, and that it just kind of shows that we haven't learned. Or if you think about
hmm
racism, like what's been happening lately, like the kind of stuff that we're seeing is the kind of stuff that you would think in 2020 you would not see, but
Yeah.
yet it's
Still
happening like
happening.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Totally.
But yeah, I don't want to divert. But what I was saying is that I actually didn't know that you were in Costa Rica.
hmm
Or I want to talk to you because I just thought all along that you were in Toronto.
hmm
Because this is where you live, and I think in Costa Rica you're just there temporarily, right? You can tell
I
us more
am.
about
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
that
I'll
happened that
tell
you
you
were
the
there.
crazy story of how we ended up
Yeah,
here and how we
exactly.
stayed. But yeah. Yeah, in Costa Rica right now, but definitely I live in Toronto. You got it.
Hmm. So can you, if you want to share,
Yeah.
how you ended up there, and why how long have you been
Um,
there, and what happened?
well, let's see. So I have a really interesting story. My background is actually Indian. So from India, from a place called Goa that used to be colonized by the Portuguese. Um, and so my last name, so my first name is Farah, my last name is Rodriguez. But I was born in Dubai, hence the name Farah, which is more of an Arabic name. It means joy. And so I was
Mm,
born in Dubai, and we were there till I was 6. Then my stepfather got transferred over for work to Nigeria. So I grew up in Nigeria. I grew up from when I was 6 years old to about 19. Um, and then I moved to Canada for university. And now it's been almost 10 years of me living in Canada. Um, my stepdad's Italian, so I've also, been raised in a
mm,
very Italian culture. So
mm.
when people often ask me, like, "Oh, where are you from?" It's like I'm not too sure how to answer. Do you mean where I grew up? What I resonate the most with? My usual question is like honestly, I'm part of the human race, you know, like that's really like I'm a human being, you know. Um, yeah, so that's been
There
an
you go.
interesting story
Yeah,
for me. Yeah, yeah, interesting journey, and I've learned so much. And
yeah. I
every
actually
chapter,
wrestle with. I
uh,
go ahead. Go ahead.
oh, I can't remember what I was about to say, but go for it.
Oh, sure. Sorry to cut the train of thought. I was just
All
going to
good.
add that when they asked me where I'm from, I also struggle with that because I was born in Peru
Uh
and I came
huh.
here when I was 17, and so
Right.
like right now more than half my life I live in Canada, and so sometimes they ask me like where are you from, and like you look like you're
Yeah.
Latino, but
Yes.
sometimes people think I'm from the Philippines, and
Yeah, I could see that,
Might be
and
Norman.
because
both.
I
and
could
I've
see
been told
that.
like I have some Asian, like I
You
don't know, a little bit of a
do.
slanted eyes. So I don't know.
Yeah.
People said I'm from Japan, like from somebody even said
And
But
China
you
at one
know
point.
what? Peru is beautiful. Peru has so many different, like, because I've been to Peru.
Oh, okay.
I've actually worked with a very special shaman in Peru. Um,
Was
and
it Iquitos? Did you go to Iquitos?
we did go to Iquitos last year.
Oh. Hmm.
And that was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. Um, and we actually, Elizabeth and I did a ceremony
Was
for,
that
so
the
this is my spouse.
ayahuasca?
We did know what we did is we did a unification of our souls.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was
I
very
don't know about
special.
that.
We had certain ceremonies we did in rivers and things like that. Oh, it was one of the most. And then we were actually able to meet with a tribe, with an Aboriginal tribe. So the tribe of the shaman in Peru, and they're the ones that did the ceremony for us, the unification of it, and it was incredible. My spouse is a woman,
Mm-hmm.
so you know, it's the first time that they were unifying two women
mm,
in that
Mm.
village,
Oh,
the souls of two women in that village, and it was just me and her. We had no families. It was super, super private, very intimate. It was one of the most incredible experiences. Like oh, it was the most, yeah, it was the most beautiful thing. But going back to Peru, I find people in Peru, everybody looks so different. They have so many different looks to them, you know, and I can see a little bit of the Asian sometimes in there. So you know, I don't blame people for questioning you've got a little bit of Asian there for you.
I do.
Yeah,
I'm sure if
yeah.
I do that
Somewhere,
DNA test, there will be some
somewhere. I
23
mean,
and
interesting.
we're a merge of
There will,
everything at this point, you know?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So this ritual, I find it very interesting. I actually did the ayahuasca ritual when I was in teenage years.
Wow, in
Uh,
Iquitos?
yeah,
Come
and
on.
Iquitos, says for people that don't know, and Tierno included.
Mm-hmm.
Iquitos is the northern part of Peru where that connects to the Amazon, like
Yes,
the
mm-hmm.
rainforest area. That's
yes,
part of like the entire Amazon rainforest,
totally.
with the Amazon River and all that. Yeah, and I was there. Did a ceremony. It's not like your ceremony. I did an ayahuasca ceremony, which I'm sure you heard about as well.
Yes,
And it's kind
absolutely.
of it's kind of designed to cleanse your soul, like to purge your body and soul from negativity, and start reconnect you to like Mother Earth, and reconnect you to like to the entire being. So yeah, I did that. So when you're telling me about your ritual, I was like, yeah, yeah,
Uh-huh.
I'm familiar with that.
Yes. Well, that's a very intense experience, you know,
so
and but
so so find that very interesting. So
mhm.
how did it came about that you decided to do that? Like because it's you know.
That may be a story for another podcast, but I'll try to give you
Okay.
the the synopsis version. Um, well, my spouse, I'm trying to figure. So my spouse back in 2016, she actually healed a pancreatic tumor, by going down to Peru and working with this shaman. And he worked on her body with plants. So he worked on her spinal cord with plants. And she did about 11 treatments with him. And then for about 2 years was on a specific kind of tea, drinking certain teas, changed her diet, and now she's completely free of bad cells in her pancreas, which is
Awesome.
incredible, especially when it comes to pancreatic tumors. So this happened before she met me. And then the
Mm.
year that we met, her and I, it was probably like I was in love. This is also what's interesting about her and I is I've never been with a woman. I had no interest whatsoever in being with a woman. I'd always find women attractive, but never to the point of like, oh, I could see myself being with a woman. But when I met her, and her the same, she is the same thing. Like she's never been with a woman. She was actually in a relationship with a man. Um, and yeah, we just met each other. We built this strong friendship, like instantly. And before in a few months of us knowing each other, I was like, wow, I just feel so strongly for her. And I could not understand what it was. And as we started to spend more time together, I started to discover I had feelings for her and she had feelings for me. And it was really awkward because we're like, I don't really know what we're supposed to do with this information. Like, I know that I'm a heterosexual woman, like I just know it. Like, this is everything I've known about my life. But it was something that we just could not deny whatsoever. And we started to learn more and read more into what twin flames are, and really understanding, the soul and how the soul doesn't, it's not about the masculine and the feminine, we all embody masculine and feminine. And so the first year of our relationship was quite a bit of learning, but it also brought up, interestingly enough, and we'll go into it, it's tied into this whole topic actually today. I, for some reason, that first year had really difficulties being intimate with Elizabeth. And every time I would open up to her in our sex life, I would have the experience of being raped. It's so the most craziest for a whole year. I would have this traumatic experience come up. And I started to look like, where's this from? Where is this coming from? Like, where is this, or this experience of being tortured? It was just this really weird. And so she suggested that we go to see her shaman. And so a year after us dating, we went down to Peru. I got 11 treatments. He was able to help me understand that in a different life, I had it very hard. And there was, a form of, I mean, I don't know how much I can say, but I don't know, but it was very, very dark in a past life. And I came into this life really desiring to release it. And my journey with Elizabeth, was bringing that up to purify. So that's what led to us going to Peru and then
Yeah, no,
ending up in Iquitos.
I heard about that term, twin flames. I researched that in the
Mm-hmm.
past.
Oh,
So when you
it's
said that,
so
I was like, yeah,
interesting.
I
Now,
heard about that,
there's
but
one
that.
thing you didn't tell us though. Who made the first move?
So you know what? I'm sure if
Mm.
she was here, we would have a debate. But I think it's hard to tell. Like, we were so shy and so scared. I was, she would say I made the first move, but in many ways, I felt like she was making the. So it was like, but the first kiss was me. If you mean by that, like the
Mhm.
first kiss, I was like, it was me for sure.
Okay. No, I meant
Yeah.
Mm.
more like who's gonna bring up the subject. There's the elephant in the room, so for sure
Uh,
somebody will.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think it was me. I'm more of the, okay, this is happening. We got to figure it out, like
Yeah.
she's a little bit more chill about things. So,
Yeah, no, this whole story is. I mean, I could ask you a million questions, but just
oh
like you
man,
said,
yeah.
there is enough material probably for us for a forthcoming podcast. So
Totally.
now that I know
Uh,
this, what you've gone through, like I could ask you a million questions. But one thing that's interesting to point out is that what you describe for your story is that this the connection, yeah, you have with your spouse
Mm-hmm.
seems to be so deep and so strong that it
Mm-hmm.
transcended gender preconceptions,
Absolutely.
which is like
Absolutely.
I don't even think I heard that before. Like
Mm-hmm.
I heard all of those things you said where we said like when we talk about gender, it's kind of
Yes.
like you have to look at it like a spectrum, right? It's not like
Mm-hmm.
you're male and female. Like even if you're a male, you could be in the spectrum of leaning a little bit towards the female side as well, because
Mm-hmm.
nobody's like perfectly male or perfectly female.
Yeah,
No.
that's why we
It's
have
just
like
there's
the
a
Yeah.
Y chromosomes, right?
there is a spectrum,
Yeah.
and
Everyone's
so
perfect, but we're not
yeah,
perfectly male or female. Yeah, I love that. I
yeah.
love what you're saying.
And then the concept of the soul, like I
Uh-huh.
heard that before, that the soul basically has no gender. Like the body that we have now has like we have a gender because we
Mm-hmm.
have our body parts, and we are born with those chemical estrogen and like um balance and against the what is it, the male hormone, I forget right now, the
Testosterone.
exactly with
Yes.
that we're born with those balances, right? We have more of this, more of that, and it's like that makes us who we are. But that's like how much of that is dictated by the body that we're in, which many would
Mm-hmm.
say like this body is just like a vessel. This
Yeah,
is like
totally.
something that from which we experience our current reality. But then like
Mm-hmm.
people who believe that there's more to this will
Yes.
say that like the soul is the spirit is eternal,
Yeah,
and we go through several reincarnations and experiences, and a lot of the times we bring some of those memories from other lives with us,
exactly.
and we may or may not realize that we need to do something about them. We
Mm-hmm.
just we don't know. But
Totally.
that whole topic, and I actually know, I have a friend whose name is Ryan Coelho, who was actually here in a previous episode.
Yep.
We, me and him, we just get into. And Tierno knows that because he was in this podcast 2 episodes ago, and we get into these topics of like the meaning of life, and like
Uh-huh.
let's say the meaning of life because it's just like a very funny thing of saying it. But we do
Mm-hmm.
get into very deep spiritual topics, philosophical topics, and what
Mm-hmm.
would be like great if
Mm.
in a future podcast we have you and him,
Oh, I would
and
love it.
it would be crazy. You're like you would not believe. Like and he's also from Goa. Actually, he's from
Oh,
India, from
come
Goa.
on. That's
Yeah,
so cool. All
so you
right.
have a lot
Let's
in
do it.
common. And then when you talk about like twin flames, you talk about like you know living past lives and all those things. Those
Yeah.
are things that I'm very interested in. I believe in,
Yeah.
and I know like Ryan is also into those things. But
Yeah.
sometimes if you say things like twin flames, people were like scratching their heads. It's like, what
Like,
the hell
what
is twin
is
flame?
that? Yeah.
Because
And
everybody
there's,
hears soulmates, but
yes,
that's something
totally.
else, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
It's very cool. And right now, apparently, more than ever, twin flames are coming together because there's this uprising on the planet. So um, I'm finding, this conversation could be very helpful. Twin flames for me, when I discovered it, oh, it helped me so much. So yeah, it's definitely a conversation. So I'm totally open in doing any more of these podcasts. This is so fun. So fun.
yeah. I feel like podcasts sort of like puts you in this position where you're speaking. I don't know. This is my own experience.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I'm doing a podcast, it's like like I live a life where I try to be as genuine as possible with what I
Uh-huh.
say and how I live.
Yeah.
But when I'm doing a podcast, at least for me, it feels like it's forcing me to be more of that.
Mm.
Mm.
Even though in regular
Authentic.
life, yeah, in
Totally.
regular life, I try to do that. I like it. I cannot stand anything that is not that.
Mm-hmm.
Like even if like if I shame myself by admitting certain things, I will just
Yep.
say it.
Yep.
And when I'm doing a podcast, I feel like it just even puts me more into that mode where
Yep.
I like I had to be more honest, more truth, more authentic.
So good.
And
So
you could
good.
say that you're speaking from the soul if you want, but
Mm.
like it just puts me in that mode. So that's why like it's the format is it's just great. Yeah,
Yeah. So this for you is a vehicle
Mm.
to, like, you
absolutely.
discovering your truth, your soul's language, which is beautiful. Very
Yes,
special.
yes.
Yeah.
So one way of putting it for sure.
Hmm.
But I think we started the conversation where you were, I think, about to tell us how you ended up in Costa Rica, and I
Yes.
believe, and then I think I interrupted you, and then we went off like into another
Into
tangent.
a tangent,
Yeah.
but it was a very cool tangent. So let me see. So initially, we came down to Costa Rica for a wedding. We were going to be here for 10 days. A friend of mine from Toronto was getting married to her beautiful man, and they had a small, intimate gathering. And this was happening in March. So March 18th was the wedding in Costa Rica. We had planned to fly out March 17th. And as you know, March of 2020 was the beginning of this crazy
Hmm.
uprising. And so COVID, we were, the countries were closing down their borders. And Elizabeth and myself, and another friend of mine, we're kind of looking at each other like, okay, do we go? Do we not go? But something really deep in my heart just kept saying, Farah, you should go. And, what's really great is Elizabeth, myself, and our girlfriend, we can work from anywhere in the world, which is really great. As long as we have our computer, everything is online for us. Um, and so, we said, if worse comes to worse, we end up staying there for a few months if they lock down everything. Um, but, we could work from there. Like, is there anything that's holding us back? And we said no. So we jumped onto a plane. Um, and so we arrived on the 17th of March. The 18th of March, Costa Rica closed its borders. So, like,
Hmm.
timing, and we were like divine timing for
Wow.
everything. And and then we stayed for the 10 days. The wedding happened. It was way smaller because not as many people came down, obviously. And
Hmm.
after the 10 days, we made a choice. We looked at each other. We're like, okay, so we could go back to Toronto because there were still patriation flights, that
Hmm.
they're
Hmm.
coming and taking people back. But um, I just felt really strongly that I needed to be here. And, and it proved right. Now it's been 6 months, and it's been the most beautiful 6 months of me really diving into myself more, because now I have no other. I think this is really the time for everybody. It's less work. It's less being distracted by other things. It's less, seeing your friends and family. You're really spending that time with yourself, more than ever, I think. And that for me has opened up so much into, okay, what really matters to me, what do I want to get involved with, what's pulling at my heartstrings. And then, that really led to human trafficking. I, like, right from the beginning of my trip, it was like I was starting to read, I was starting to, watch more videos and starting to do the research, myself, and beginning conversations as well. And now it's, all the pieces are connecting for me in many ways. So it's been such a blessing. But that's we came down here for a wedding for 10 days, and now it's been close to 6 months. I think it's wild.
So what sparked this interest in human trafficking? How did that come about? Was it just like a random occurrence? You just found information in front of you, and then you just follow the thread?
I think things usually start off random, but then
Mm.
you're like, oh man, all these little dots are connecting. So um to to bring it back a little bit, I've always, for the last 5 years, I've been studying tantra. And tantra you know is is basically understanding what sexual energy is, and how you can use sexual energy. It's a lifestyle. A lot of
Mm.
people, when they hear sexual energy, their mind goes straight to sex, right?
Mm.
And I would say probably about 5% of what you can do with sexual energy is sex. In the last 5 years, I started to dive into what is that 95%.
Mm.
What else can you do with sexual energy? Um, and it took something, because I started to realize that I had so many um, blocks and inhibitions when it came to understanding sex and sexual energy. And then I started to dive into why is that so, and look at the different pieces of how we've been educated and how, there's been a lot of suppression around sex in many ways. Um, and so yeah, so I the last 5 years has been diving into the spiritual aspects of sexual energy. It's diving into my spirituality through sexual energy. It's understanding how I can heal my body through sexual energy, how I can manifest the life of my dreams through sexual energy. So really draw it into my life versus go out there. And it's been the most incredibly confronting, but the most um, incredibly gifting experience of my entire life. And it has drawn in the love of my life,
Mm.
the life that I've always wanted. It's been remarkable. So that's in the background of where my passion has been, is like really working with
Mm.
women to discover this, specifically women, for themselves.
Mm.
And then when we moved to Costa Rica temporarily. um, there's so many things that were coming up with the COVID situation. There was many conspiracy theories and we say conspiracy theories, but I really invite listeners and people to take it on as critical thinking, because I don't believe any information that you read and see should just be taken as truth. I think, it's important that if it's triggering you, or if there's something, that you're feeling with it, that you go and do your own research. But that's essentially, I started to dig into more around, it was starting to find me, like my friends were starting to post more about it. I was starting to learn and understand more, the behind the scenes around what may be happening with the pandemic. Some people call it plandemic. So I was starting to dive into that. And the thing that really caught my eye more than ever was the human trafficking conditions of the world. And the more I started to dig, I'm like, I was like, wow, it's blown me away in many ways. And, I often say with this topic, there's a lot of healing, absolutely, for people, yeah, every person that is involved in in this this conversation. It's the people, the bystanders that know that it's happening and are not saying anything. It's the victims. It's the people that are participating in these activities. I think on a worldwide scape, there's sexual energy is something that has been so suppressed, that has led to certain ways of being that we have taken on. Um, and I think more than ever, it's time to have that conversation. And I think it starts at the individual level, um, and and then it pushes out that way. But that's how I got to where I am right now.
So if you talk about conspiracy, so I there was a period of my time of my life, and this is about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where I had actually a website. It was called the newmediawarrior.net,
Mm-hmm.
and I've written about 160 articles.
Wow.
Right now it's unpublished because it came to a point in my life where I was like, there's a lot of stuff that I've written that could be called conspiracy theory,
Uh-huh.
and where I need to be careful how I disseminate this information.
Right.
So I decided like I need to transition from the format, I believe, and that's why like I wanted to do a podcast from there.
Mm-hmm.
But during the research that I've done, I done research about conspiracy theories, and one of the things that I've come across on a lot during that research that I've done is the usage of sex
Mm-hmm.
through rituals,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not just like, we're not talking about just like very white rich people and their
Mm-hmm.
networks, and
Mm-hmm.
like we've heard stories recently.
Mm-hmm.
What is that guy's name who's
Epstein?
has a documentary? Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's an unraveling of connections that he has had with several people who you would never probably imagine they would be have
Hmm.
any connection. But once again, what I read with what I read or what I come across in my studies in conspiracy theories is that sex, like I said, through rituals, um, has come across here a lot
Yeah.
during that research.
Yeah. And
And
it's
so,
something that has stemmed down like from the Romans and from the Greeks. Like it's been happening for a long time. It's also part of my like research as well.
so what about you think is sex like? So we have many parts to ourselves, right? There's our intellectual self, there's our soul self,
Hmm.
and there are different kinds of energies as well. Like talk about chakras, like different kinds of things that happen.
Centers. Yeah.
Well, what makes sex so powerful that is used, but it may or may not be used by groups.
Hmm.
And then we have you talk about tantra.
Hmm.
What about sex is so defining, let's say?
Yeah.
Why? Or do you have an answer for that?
And this is part of like my learning and my discovery around it, but really sex is one of sexual energy is the most powerful energy that we contain within our body. Is the most powerful. And when you learn to generate it, contain it, release it, but really bring intentionality to your sexual energy, it's your power is infinite. What you can do with this energy. And I think I think, and this is part of like my belief, right? Like it's not 100% the truth, but my experience is that elite groups and people who have wanted to be of power have used this, have discovered this energy and discovered the power of this energy and wanted to contain it for themselves so that most people would be dulled to it and dormant to this power. And so over the years, you then experience, things being taught to children around the dangers around sex. There's also in the media, there's so much loud, like, even through, I went through Catholic um, school, and sex was such like a conversation that was like you couldn't even talk about it, right? And most
Mm,
of us most of us don't, like, we're raised within that environment of like it's taboo,
mm,
you don't talk
Mhm.
about it, you don't like, kids kind of like discover it a lot through porn. Most adults discover sex through porn, through prostitution. And what's incredible is, when we're born as kids, like that's a very natural thing for us to do, is actually touch ourselves, because it ignites like a pleasure. It ignites this like this connection, this deep connection. And right from when we're kids, like kids, like when I was younger, I remember when I would like touch myself, my mom would say like, Farah, don't do that. And a lot of kids, like, they will naturally touch themselves. In fact, in the womb, as babies are being I was going to say put together, but that's not the appropriate.
Somewhat.
as they're as they're coming,
yeah.
molding together, that's
Yeah.
something
Yes.
that babies do in the womb, is they know to touch themselves. It's a way of
Really.
connection. Yeah, it's
Never
very,
heard
very
that one.
beautiful, and it's
Mm,
very sacred. And it is an energy that you can use to create power, to create beauty, to create manifest what you'd like. And depending on who's behind it, it's not about good or bad energy. It's a powerful energy. So the intention behind it is what amplifies this
mm.
energy.
Yeah,
um
I was gonna say because our society, or at least like we know this, uses sex quite a bit. Like, and like the porn industry has like grown exponentially.
mhm.
There's
Yeah,
sex in movies. There's the idea of sex. People
there's
have
a
sex in their minds
normalized, yeah, there's a
every day.
normalization of it.
but I think because of from what I said, from what you said, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
you said like the sexual energy is the most powerful energy. But in a sense, would you agree to say that there is sexual energy, and then there is sex in our society quite a bit, and in some countries it's
Mm-hmm.
taboo and whatnot, but still is sex exists in the minds of people.
Mm-hmm.
But would you agree to say that people do sex, but they do it in an unconscious way, and
Uh-huh.
therefore it's misguided, and then instead of being beneficial to you, it's actually doing the opposite because you're not using that in a way that you could be using it for your
Mm-hmm.
growth.
Yeah. Well, I think it's hard. I wouldn't say that it ends up being the opposite of beneficial for you. What I will say is that however you go into this energy is what you're going to get. So a lot of people, will turn to sex as a form of release, right? A lot of people will turn to like a lot of our education does come from the media with when it comes to sex, and it does, yes, in a way, I do agree with what you're saying. It is unconscious because we're not educated on what it looks like to have conscious sex, right? um, and I can't remember what else you were saying there, but I've
Hmm.
lost my train of thought. But yeah, I do
Yeah,
agree
no.
that, like, even for myself, like, it was very unconscious. Now it's since tantra, I'm like, oh my god, I'm
Hmm.
like, and it's a constant discovery. There's nothing to know about sexual energy. You get to constantly discover it as you discover yourself and you understand your energy. It happens primarily at the individual self and your connection to spirit, to God, to energy, to universe, however you see that. And then it goes outwards.
So you don't think there's harm than people that engage in a lot of sex, and by that I could say like sexual workers or people
Um,
who have multiple partners. Some people like to to do that,
mhm.
and they can have a lot of sex in their life, but would not agree that when those people do that, they're not harming themselves? Like, is something harming, like their soul harming is.
Hmm. So there's different, people will have different takes on this conversation, right? Sexual workers versus, people that are, dive into polygamy, for example, and have more than
Hmm.
one partner and such. Um, what I believe in through my experience so far, right? Because, like I said, I am discovering it as we go. Um, when it comes from a place of love and intention, like when you're setting intention for this experience, that's what you're going to get out of it.
Hmm.
Okay. Like I've met a tantric sexual worker, and her mission is to work with men and
Hmm.
to heal them
Hmm.
through
Hmm.
sexual experiences.
Oh.
So heal them through, experiences with their mom in their past experiences, because men also have this huge, there's this massive pressure on men when it comes to, their power, their sexuality. Men have a strong, like when they look at a woman with this strong desire, it scares women, and then they feel suppressed, and then they're like diminishing their masculine. There's this whole thing. So she's a sexual worker that interacts with men sexually, with a very strong intention to be of service and to purify and to heal, right? So I'm not gonna, like, I don't know enough to be like that's right or that's wrong. I don't believe, I really remove the morality even in this conversation with human trafficking.
Hmm.
What's really important to me is to remove the morality of it, because as soon as we make something right or wrong, it it separates, and it's more of a conversation of, okay, what is it, you know like, what is it as a human being that I stand for, like what is the intentionality behind it. If you're,
Mm.
and that's really the result that you're going to get.
Mm.
So it's a
Yeah,
little bit of a different take on
mhm.
and I'm in that discovery right now, in my life.
Mm. No, I think I can agree with that, because also when you were talking about how you arrived to even knowing about this topic or caring about this topic in the way that you are, and you
Mm-hmm.
describe your journey where you were talking about like your interest in tantra, and now you're into human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
I always like to reflect about intentionality constantly, because I believe, and it's not just like intentionality towards sex, because I agree with that, but I think intentionality should is something that a lot of the times we seem to be on an automatic pilot,
Yes,
and we are not conscious of the things that we do and what we want. But a lot
absolutely.
of the things that if when we put intentions in anything, I believe we have a lot to say, and we have a lot to contribute to the realization of our own reality, whatever
Mm-hmm.
it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that manifest in so many different places.
Yes.
But yeah, no, it absolutely makes sense.
Yep.
Because I myself, I don't think I've thought about intentionality when it comes to sex, because to
Mm-hmm.
me it was just something that you do with someone that you love very much, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and
For some of us, yes.
and then something is something that you share, it's something that you share with that person, something very
Yeah.
intimate, because intimacy is not just sex. Intimacy is also like, you share your childhood stories. That's intimacy
Mm-hmm.
too, because you don't do that with everybody, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
But like the situation where you're having sex with someone, to me, I look at it as like the ultimate manifestation of intimacy. That's how I look at
Mm-hmm.
it, and it can be beautiful. But when you talk about intentionality and using sexual energy to heal and to better ourselves, that that puts a different spin in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I
When it comes to that, right? When you sit with that, then you can take a look to see,
mm,
like, does polygamy actually work for me? Right.
mm-hmm,
And for those in prostitution that are willing, right? Because that's also a conversation, because there's the world of prostitution. There are individuals that are that choose it for themselves, and then there's a big piece of that people
mm.
in prostitution, they're not choosing that necessarily for themselves. So you can start to look at it a different way once you educate yourself in sexual energy, and
Mm-hmm.
then choose for yourself.
So when you've done your research, what can you say about our current status in human trafficking right now in 2020? How's the
Hmm.
world doing in terms of human trafficking? What have you seen in terms of the numbers and other things you have come across?
Yeah. Well, a lot of these numbers are, like, if you do the basic research around this, like, a lot of these numbers come up like right immediately. But, this industry, when it comes to the amount of money flowing through this industry right now, is about $150 billion.
Wow.
$150 billion, like, not million, but
Billions
billions.
So
exploiting
it
each other.
Mm,
so the money
mhm.
would come from the sale of people, and also from like quote unquote renting of people as well, right? Is that how it
Exactly.
gets
You
calculated?
got it. Yeah, you totally got
Oh.
it. Like, it's absolutely the renting of people, like the way you put that, and then the selling of people, and then also that comprises of the porn industry as well, right? And
Mm.
what's really interesting is, with any sort of um, normal business, you
Mm-hmm.
sell a product, and then that's it. It's complete. Um, but with a human being could be sold between 15 to 20 times in a day, which blows my mind. um, like, that's like, how does that even, I cannot even, like, if that's, I think, was the first part of my research, like, I cannot even imagine. Like I don't know how to how to even imagine that, So, um, but yes, it's in the renting, the selling of human beings, and um, it's and the porn industry.
So that's interesting. You mentioned the porn industry, right? Because as we said, I think, especially I think because of COVID, I think Tierno, you also you've seen those numbers as well. That the fact
Mm.
that people are more at home
Mm-hmm.
and they were
Mm-hmm.
isolated.
Yes.
I think even
Mm-hmm.
Pornhub made it very clear that they had like an explosion of like usage visits.
Oh yeah.
At one point, I think Pornhub made their Pornhub Pro free. I think at one point.
Yeah, wasn't it
Uh-huh.
like in April, I think they gave everyone like a free month in Europe. I'm not
Wow.
sure about
Yeah,
America,
Oh
but yeah.
wow. I had no idea. Okay.
yeah.
That's
No, but
interesting.
the idea behind porn is like I don't think a lot of people, myself included, realize that when they think of porn, or when, like, they come across materials, pornographic materials, and then there's the people that they see,
Mm-hmm.
the assumption is that these women, and I
Mm-hmm.
think men could be included as well,
Mm-hmm.
give
Absolutely.
give their give their consent to do these things.
Yeah.
Like they like they're getting paid, and that's their business. This is what they do as a job, right?
Yeah.
But when you include the porn industry into the term human trafficking,
Mm-hmm.
then you start to see it differently, right? Because then like what you may be seeing there is not someone who's given their consent to do what you're looking at.
Yeah.
But what you may be seeing that is that they are actually forced to do that,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
maybe in some cases they're not even getting paid for that. Maybe
Uh-huh.
But I
their
guess
life.
porn is used to like kind of masquerade the fact that they're like independent contractors and they're just doing this to get paid.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's factual, but I'm just assuming that's what it is.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting about Pornhub is it's a video sharing and pornography website.
Hmm.
So it's, I don't know too much about this, but I think I heard that, you can get on Pornhub and submit a video yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And it could be of somebody, it could be of you interacting sexually with your partner, and you could upload that and she would have no idea.
Yeah.
Okay. And some of the most, like, for me, it's like it blows my mind because they've talked about, kids being videotaped and being raped by
Hmm.
more than one person, and this video being uploaded and
Hmm.
being on Pornhub for years, like 2 to 3 years. And this is where you really start to question, if there's, and it's interesting because you look at, companies like Instagram and Facebook, and they have, control taking down information. Like they'll question
Hmm.
some of your posts depending on what you post, especially when it comes to things that trigger critical thinking. But for like a website like Pornhub, it's like there's a lot of things being allowed on websites like this, and and this begins to normalize for people. This then becomes like a normality, right? Like they use words like um, underage. They use things like minors, or, they use words like this versus, what it really is rape. Like these people have not consented to any of these interactions, and these videos are up online. So
Hmm.
it's kind of like, I remember. And what's interesting about Pornhub, and this is also this is also another really interesting fact, is when you watch porn, there is, and I'm doing some more research into it, but there's a chemical that gets released within your body, um, with that turn on and such, and it's an addictive experience. So it
Hmm.
then becomes like an addictive thing. And as you, with any addiction, as you go through an addiction, it becomes stronger, and you
Mm.
want a stronger, what you would call it, like a stronger hit, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you start to dig and dive into more, um, perhaps more. You may start off with simple content, and then get into something a little bit deeper. I know that was the case for myself when I first stumbled upon Pornhub. I'm like, oh, this is interesting, and then I started to watch it almost daily, and then it started to pick my interest into other forms of these sexual videos. And then at some point I'm like, wow, I just don't feel good, like I don't feel good watching this. And then I stopped, but I could feel myself, like I could feel the
Mm-hmm.
addiction being built, where it started to become part of my daily ritual of going to sleep or
Mm-hmm.
waking up, or when I was stressed and I had to learn something in university, or things like that. um, so there is something interesting with this, in the sense like it does create um, this addictive experience for people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what have you seen in terms of like, because when I did my research, and I think it's an understanding to say that in different countries in the world, the situation, the economical situation, society, societal instability is
Mm-hmm.
more of a reality. In
Mm-hmm.
underdeveloped countries like Peru, where I was
Yes.
born.
Yeah.
And it's because of that there's a lot of desperation, and because of that there's a lot of corruption, and then there's a lot of things that are not following society
Mm-hmm.
in the way, like in a, let's say, more developed, in quote unquote more developed country like Canada, for example.
Mm-hmm.
What have you seen in terms of like what happens in, how does human trafficking manifest in a quote unquote developed society like Canada,
Mm-hmm.
um, um, where you would think it doesn't happen,
Mm-hmm.
but it's sort of like it's happening actually, and we're not aware because we just assume that these things happen in underdeveloped countries, poor countries, but
Yeah.
they don't so much happen in the developed countries because
Yeah.
shouldn't happen.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest. A lot of people don't believe that it's happening in countries like Canada and the States. You're absolutely right, and I think it is. And what's really interesting, the more I started to dive into it, is girls and boys would be recruited from people that they know.
Mm.
So either a neighbor, an employee, um, a family member, an uncle. It's really interesting, and it does happen in environments. So that's one version of it, where it happens in environments where there is less education, and children are, or grown-ups are more susceptible to taking on and saying yes to these things, because there's they're being told that they're going to get something for themselves, some money,
Mm.
education, things like that. There's that side of it, and then there's also, sad to say, there's also um, social service companies as well, that take in children or take in babies and end up also selling them. So there's a few ways. In fact, speaking about Canada, in our backyard, and this is something that I'm looking to dive into more, to see how does this actually happen, in quote unquote, like not quote unquote, but developed countries. um, I think I just read a couple of days ago that we had in Brampton, two people caught for human trafficking, and they had two girls with them, 16 and 18. So this is happening. It's like, and it is under our nose. Um, And how it's happening is something that I'm starting to discover and learn about. Um, and it's happening with minors. It's more than anyone else. It's happening with minors because they're so innocent, and they're easily guided, and they think the person has the best interest for them. Or
Mhm.
sometimes people will get to know these. Sometimes it's with partners. You think you have a boyfriend, you have him for a year, and then he asks you for a favor. It's usually related to money, and you're thinking you're doing this for love. So there's different categories that I'm like starting to understand, um, that begin to draw children and young people, or not even sometimes even adults, into this conversation, into this world of human
So
trafficking.
I just wanted to
so
point out one thing about the Brantham case that you mentioned. You're
Mm-hmm.
absolutely right because the two girls, one is 16 and then the
Yeah.
other one is 18.
Mm-hmm.
And the guys who are around that, I guess, center of that activity, one is
Mm-hmm.
22 and then the other one is pretty much underage.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah, it's usually with like it's and it blows. I still don't understand how, but
like,
it is with somebody that they know.
hmm
It's somebody that they trust. It's other kids. It's other teenagers. It's a family member. It's somebody, their employee. It's someone that is close to them and that they feel safe and that they trust.
I guess there's always that myth or like misconception that is always like Norman mentioned earlier, like this rich white man,
Yeah,
or this
and that's
powerful
happening, but
person.
there's also it's important that we shed lights on every level.
Hmm
But yeah.
just that's what I'm gonna say is like, so you brought up a number, a sum like billions of, I think you said 150 billion, something like that.
150 billion, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the
So what
second largest, excuse me, it's the second largest, um what do they call it,
in industry or economy
industry.
or like,
Yeah,
yeah,
industry in the world, after, so it's even higher than the industry of like weapons. I think it's
yeah.
like it blows my mind. Second
So what?
largest.
How do we? So we don't want to like break it down to the nitty gritty, but like, who are the people? Like we feel that. I mean, when I say we, I mean like the people, like regular people. We fuel that industry in different ways, but who are like the biggest players here? Who are the people who are fueling this, who are amassing this amount of money, who are benefiting the most out of this? Have you identified the kind of like the heads or the like?
I mean, there's definitely people that are benefiting from the money, right? And I don't know that I have enough research to actually say that, but there are
Mm,
people. So there's two categories, is what I'm identifying. Is there's people benefiting from the money, and then there's people benefiting from those sexual interactions and experiences,
mm-hmm,
right? And like I mentioned, sexual energy, it's an amplifier of your intention. And so there's those two worlds of it,
mm-hmm,
and I think it's important to identify both of those, because I think um, those comprise of two different kinds of people, depending on
mm,
what their intention. There's definitely people that are like, wow, this is definitely a lucrative way of making money. And then there's the people where it's like, wow, like these interactions, you know give me power. They when it comes to, I mean, there's so many sexual rituals that also happen, and they draw in certain powers, especially from kids,
hmm
and torture and things like that,
mm.
right? So there's two different pieces of it. um
Well, sorry to segue, but
mm,
because I heard that before about children, specifically the targeting of children in rituals and whatnot.
yes.
Why did they pick on the kids? Like why can they do a ritual
Mm.
with the grown up?
Mm-hmm.
And why the kids? What about the kids? What is their fixation?
Mm-hmm. Well, kids under the age of 8,
Mm,
specifically under the age of 8, when they are tortured, specific, and it could be sexually tortured, it could be torture of any other. Like they produce a chemical within their body, and it's called adrenochrome. And basically, this chemical is then infused into their blood, and this is something that, when consumed, provides certain things. So they say it provides certain psychic abilities, it provides certain powers, it provides, they say, diminishes aging, and
mm,
so forth. This is what happens when you consume it. But also, my understanding as well is that there's something around the innocence. There's like the innocence of a child, that when I'm going to say sacrifice, they can set certain
mm,
intentions around that. I don't fully know the full, I don't have the full understanding of
mm,
it, but I have watched some disturbing, and listened to some disturbing recordings around
mm,
children that were um, included in these rituals.
oh,
Um, and again, this happens really secretly within very, like, within certain communities. So it's parents that get involved. They get, they collect children from social work companies, um, and they perform these rituals on these children. And children have also been included in the sacrificing of other children,
mm,
and sexual rituals. So yeah, it's pretty shocking. And what's crazy is that these people that are involved with, they have quite a bit of power when it comes to um, keeping hidden. So for
mm,
example, this one video that I watched, these two
mm,
children talking about how they're involved in these sexual rituals and sacrificing of babies. They actually, my understanding is that they still are with their father. The mom came out and shared, this is what she did, because their mom and father are separated.
mm,
She found out from her kids that this was happening, and it was supposed to be a secret between the father and the kids. And right away she went to speak to somebody about it, and nothing has really come forth. And it's hard to understand what's happening in the background there. But just like Jeffrey Epstein,
mm, mm,
that what's great is, like, Netflix brought that out, and it shows that people with power have a multitude of ways of getting by with things in a way, because of their
mm,
financial power and their connections. So, and this group,
mm.
these kids, they belong to a pretty affluent, like, their father was pretty well off. I believe it was an actor, and so forth. So yeah,
Mm.
there's a lot happening in the back there.
Yeah, and I also heard that those rituals or those people that get looped in who can also be famous or have some power,
Mm-hmm.
they get looped in also so that they can be blackmailed later,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
and then
Exactly.
that's another form
Hmm.
of control, right? Like
Exactly.
you better do what we say we want you to
Yeah,
do,
it's you.
or
Or we
You
this.
sell
release.
yourself to the. They say sell yourself to the devil. It's a
Yeah.
very, it's very much so. So I feel like a lot of, there's, Britney Spears, for example, is one person that, there's a whole thing going around for her right now. It's called Free Britney. And
Hmm.
Mm,
a lot of her fans believe that she is being controlled and manipulated. And
mm,
she just put out, I think a few weeks ago, put out a video saying, I'm totally fine, please leave me alone. But you look at her face and you're just like, you really question whether she's fine. um, and
mm,
she's somebody who started at a very young age in the industry.
mm,
So yes, so there's a lot um, that is starting to come to the surface, bit by bit, Some of it, like I really had to question, like, does that, like, that's absurd. I knew Hollywood was, crazy, and like, I'm sure they do like a bunch of like weird, crazy things, but
Mm,
not to this extent.
mm,
Um, and again, like I really welcome, anyone listening today is just really go and begin to do your own research. And take a look for yourself. And what's also crazy is Instagram and Facebook they're controlling a lot of the information that's getting out there. So a lot of things that we hear on our TV and our radios um, is very much controlled, right? Like we're
mm,
the information we're getting is controlled by the media, but it's not the media that controls it. It's really far, even further behind the media. The media is
mm,
controlled by other groups of people, and it's not the kinds of, I believe it's not the kinds of people that you see in the movies and hear on shows, or it's even further behind that. So
how have you seen that control happen in Instagram
well,
specifically?
for myself, I've specifically on COVID, posted a couple of things,
Mm,
and they've taken it down, and they've,
mm,
sort of like not a warning, but let me know that, and the people that I sent for videos to, they've taken it down. Um, and I hear as well from a few of my friends that are also part of sharing as much information as we can around COVID. Um, right now, they're not as much. They removed there was a hashtag that got removed. Actually, it was called "Free the Children." It's back on now, but it was removed for a while.
mm,
There's information on this company called Wayfair that is a furniture company,
mm,
and there was some, you can look it up, I believe, on YouTube, but basically how there was human trafficking happening on this website, Wayfair. So it is designed to look like you were purchasing furniture, but these groups of people in the background would know if they were purchasing a certain furniture, $15,000 sofa, the name of that would trigger. So they would give them information on how to purchase children through this website. So it's really, really when you start to go down the rabbit hole, you're like, huh,
yeah.
this is interesting. And one thing, a lot, like you said, a lot of people think, oh, it's a conspiracy theory, and as soon as you give it these words, conspiracy theory, there's what people are left with, like, oh, it's like not true, like it's just made
Hmm.
up, right? Like that's usually when people hear conspiracy theory, that's where their mind goes.
Mm,
And so I removed from my language as much as possible conspiracy theory. Where this whole thing began was, with 9/11, um, and the crashing of the twin towers, and the way that the towers crashed. And it's like when you start to do the research around that, it's like, certain architects were like, that's really weird that the building just collapsed right, um like right to the
Like
ground,
it's
the
an
way that,
explosion.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they have
mm,
evidence for how a big part of it was designed. But again, people wanting to protect this information, began to call it conspiracy theories. So
Mhm.
again, it diminishes the listening around these conversations and these discoveries. And so what, something that's come out is critical thinking. And that's really where I invite people, because I have moms that are like not willing to really hear this message, and I'm like, it's totally fine. I totally get it. It was really hard for me, and it still is sometimes. And it's time for people to hear it, and those who are willing to open up to it will. They absolutely will. And it's going to take critical thinking. It's going to take putting aside, okay, conspiracy theories, and it's going to take each one of us really critically thinking and doing the looking ourselves.
so when we started this podcast, sorry, I think you mentioned something about COVID-19, and was it? Did you find any connection between trafficking and COVID-19 and what's happening right now? Or Did it just no?
Um, I think there's a connection to everything happening right now. The
Mm-hmm.
Black Lives Matter uprising, the human trafficking uprising, COVID. Um, and I also look at a lot of things from the spiritual realm, and I look into, I dive quite a bit into different aspects of things that show up. So I look at the celestial realms as well. So what's happening outside of our planet, and what are some of the influences outside of our planet,
Mm-hmm.
and and I think 2020. So do I feel like there's a connection? I do ultimately feel like there's a connection. It may not be clear to the eye right now, but I do believe COVID came out. There's a lot of things. Since Trump has been actually really interesting, but since Trump has been in office, there's been a lot of shift. He has been putting a lot of focus on human trafficking, which I found really interesting. Given the information that that I was hearing in the media, of him being sexist, and he is not probably the most eloquent speaker, but it really did draw my attention, the amount of money that he's putting into, and attention he's bringing to human trafficking. I was like, that really surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
And also, really, his stand as well with COVID. It's interesting, so you're starting to see two different, like a separation, like two different worlds, with what Dr. Fauci's saying, what Bill Gates is saying, and what Trump is saying. And it's interesting. I think there's always been a divide of some sort, but um I think all of this to say is I do think that it is connected, at different levels. I think also this year, 2020, is the year where there's a lot of things that have been undercover, a lot of things that have been happening in the background. And
Mm-hmm.
2020 is like it's a pulling for, and I do believe that there are other forces involved in this process,
Mm-hmm.
that are pulling for the exposure of
Mm-hmm.
everything that doesn't work on this planet anymore. Um,
Yeah,
and
I sort of
yeah.
have shared this before, I think it's episode 3 when we're
Hmm.
talking about two business owners in Toronto,
Mm.
Hmm.
and I said that the way I feel COVID, why COVID is happening. I mean,
Hmm.
many different things that I could say about that, but one
Totally.
of the ways, at the personal level at least, and maybe energetically, I feel like it's a time of cleansing.
Hmm.
That's how I feel. It's a time of restart. It's a time of reset,
Yes.
because I feel like it sort of like forces us to pause and reflect, and
Hmm.
to think about, like, what are the things that we're doing. And at least from my
Absolutely.
perspective, it has forced me to pause, definitely,
Hmm.
and see, like, who I am, what is it that I'm aiming to do, and things that I would never, that would only sit at the back of my mind, resurface, or
Yeah.
surface, because they never had been before.
Yes.
And even like the fact that I'm doing this podcast itself, I think is a result of what we had to live through,
Absolutely. Otherwise,
and
we're
my
just
interest in.
we're just at the effect of life. There's so many
Yeah.
things happening. We're just,
Mm,
and this is, and it's beautiful what you're sharing, because it's
mm,
true. It's giving people time to, like, wait, hold, what's going on? What's going on out
mm,
there
mm.
outside of myself? Yeah,
Yeah,
very cool.
but I also feel, and I'm not sure, if I don't think I'm wrong about this, but I also cannot, and I cannot say that for sure.
Hmm.
But even with Tierno, I spoken to Tierno before, and you mentioned 9/11. We said, like, when 9/11 happened,
Hmm.
and the information that came out of 9/11, whatever conspiracy theorists, that, like, the information that just came,
Hmm.
sort of like make you think, like, okay, what happened here? Like, did planes really fly into buildings in the way that they told us?
Hmm.
And then we knew that from what happened, wars got justified, right? Like the war in
Hmm.
Iraq got justified, the war in, pretty much, like, a huge part of the Middle East got justified because of terrorism.
Mm-hmm.
And so when COVID happened, and I shared this with Tierno, I tell like, that Tierno, like this COVID thing that's happening, it
Mm-hmm.
just seems that it's happening for a reason, and it's happening in a way that it's going to enable the rulers of our world to do
Mm-hmm.
things that they would otherwise not do. So you got a
Mm-hmm.
question then, it's like, who benefits out of this, and then
Yeah.
like what is it that they are going to be doing because of this
Yeah.
that they would not be able to do otherwise, in a way that, like thinking back in 9/11, if 9/11 didn't happen, the things that they did afterwards, like the wars and then killings
Mm-hmm.
and changing of policies and laws, would not have happened, has not 9/11 happened. And now I think, um I think it's hard for people to say that, we're talking about conspiracy theories when we talk about 9/11, because there's just so much evidence right now that just, at the very least,
Uh-huh.
make
It's
people
being
question what
exposed.
happened. Like,
Yeah.
were we told the truth? It seems like we were not told the full truth, at least.
Mm-hmm.
So it just makes me think about like COVID-19. It's like, is this kind of like a new 9/11 in a way?
Uh-huh.
And if you start
Yeah.
to think about it that way, you can go down the rabbit hole of saying like, has this been like manufactured
Mm-hmm.
in a way, like, but no, it's hard to say right now, right?
It
What
is,
really
and I
happened there.
think this is the time to really, it's wonderful what you're saying, because it's the time for. So there's, the way that I see it is people that are going to be fed this information and take it as it is and just continue to follow, right? And then there's going to be people that are going to be like, hey, like, hold on a second, this is a little bit weird. Like something doesn't feel super right, or from what I'm reading, there's some like there's like it's just there's something up here, and then they begin to do some of the research themselves. But I think ultimately what I'm seeing right now is this control, like
Mm,
this like and it's always been this strong desire for control.
mm,
And the more we are controlled and limited um, within our freedom and our expression, um, and our community, like the experience, like I do believe we're designed to live in community.
mhm,
And we heal ourselves but heal each other through this process, and I believe we come to this planet to really connect back to source, and to connect back to our true selves and be of service to each other. It's always like since I was a child. um, but I do believe that there are other forces that are also playing out, that are seeking control, and I think COVID is a big piece of that. It's like it's
mm,
almost like, here, like, come to me, I'm going to save you, I'm going to put in all these practices, the vaccine and so forth, to save you. um, but in a way, I think people really ought to start to question, like, what is in this vaccine, how does it impact your body, how does it impact your system, how does it impact your connection to yourself, to source.
mhm,
um, and really start to look at some of the things that are just being given to us, and follow blindly in a way, but
mhm,
insert, and then maybe that's the right thing for you. Maybe taking the vaccine is the right thing for some people. I have no idea. But I think the important thing is to begin to start to do the research and choose for yourself, and really start to distinguish between choosing for yourself versus following something. And
mm,
this is a thing that I'm challenging myself every day
mm,
with.
mhm,
I can't say that I've excelled at this at all,
mhm,
but I'm
mhm,
at all, because I do have days where
mhm,
I'm like, I don't know, but I think it's more than ever. 2020 is a calling
mm,
for it, and really through my meditations, I can feel it stronger and stronger. It's a calling for people to come back to their selves. It's and COVID has been a big blessing, like you said. It's really given people time to think and like pause for a second, like, okay, like, if I'm not running around trying to make money right now, or if I'm not running around trying to get my kids to soccer, and I'm not running around making lunch for the kids while, like, it's just, the multitude of things that we start to get ourselves involved with. What else is there? Like, who am I? What is my life for? And why am I here? I think those are the most important questions to really begin to look. And then from that place, go live your life. From that place, choose the fruit you want, the food you want, the medication you want, the life you want, from that place. Um, but yeah, that's what I'm discovering, I think, at the end of the day, because there's so much information out there. Holy moly, like, you
Yeah,
can get inundated. The
yeah.
most important piece is for you, your connection to yourself.
Hmm.
And that for me is tantra. That for me is, this is one of the access points, is to connect to your sexual energy, to empower yourself, to get connected to your power, to infuse it through your life, discover life through pleasure, like living your life through pleasure, and have that be your direction.
Pleasure with intention, though.
Oh, totally. Pleasure with intention.
Not just pleasure for the sake of pleasure,
I mean,
No,
which is, I think,
food could be
exactly.
like,
pleasure.
I just want to
Yeah,
feel good. I want to feel good, and
yeah,
same with, like anything in life, right? Like, if we're talking about
yes,
sexual intention is important, but also
Hmm.
like food too. Like you don't just like want to eat French fries because it's pleasurable, but that's
exactly.
not good for you. It's not good for you to be doing
No.
that.
No.
Like, I mean, like, all the
Yeah.
time.
And what you think is what will manifest as well. And
Mm.
and how people think is what manifests as well. So my spouse Elizabeth will say, if you believe that French fries is healthy for you, it's your body will receive it that way. It's really interesting.
Mm.
But if 80% of the planet believes that French fries gives you cancer, guess what? That's what's going to
Mm.
happen. My mom, it's interesting. I would be so disgusted when my mom would say, because my mom is a smoker, she would say, smoking is healthy for me, Farah. And I'd be like, oh my God, stop it. That's ridiculous. That's the most ridiculous thing you could ever. Oh my God, I'd be so annoyed. And then as I started to learn more about intentionality, and how intentionality is not right or wrong, it's just intention. So when you intend something, that's what you're going to get more of. So if you intend to eat something and have it be healthy for your body, that's what you're going to get. If you intend to do something to harm somebody, you're going to get that. And then that feeds back to you as well,
Mm.
right? So those are some of the impacts. It's like the design of coming to this planet.
Mm.
But she'd say that all the time. It's like, I'm healthy. And this, as far as smoking, keeps me healthy. But she would tell me this, you guys, like she believed it. Like there was not a single,
Factual.
it's not, it's like, it's a fact
Mm.
for her until today. Like she's like, she's rocking. Like there's no, like, nothing's going on with her lungs. Like nothing's going on. Like she's incredible. And we have some of the most incredibly spiritual. She's been a teacher for me. She's been my student. She's been my friend. She's been my guide. She's been my soulmate. She, like,
Mm.
it's incredible, the relationship we have. But it took me something to get over this whole, how we create something is
This
how
is
it,
a
it is
th-
in
th-
reality.
this is another topic for another podcast. I
Oh,
think
totally.
the there's a movie. There's a movie that reminded me of that, and I don't know if you haven't seen it,
Mm.
because it kind of delves into that. It's called The Farewell, and it's a
No.
Chinese comedy drama, and
Uh-huh.
it's about, and it's just quickly what it's about. It's about a grandmother, a Chinese grandmother who gets cancer,
Uh-huh.
and who who is not told that she has cancer.
Okay.
And the reason why she's not told she has cancer, because there's a Chinese belief that if a person has a disease like that, it's better that she doesn't know that she does,
Yes, exactly.
because they say, like, if she does know,
Yeah.
then she will play a role in her own demise. Meaning,
Yes.
if she will know that, okay, I have cancer, and it's stage 4 cancer, which is like the high stage. um the fact that you know that you have a terrible disease
Mm-hmm.
will play a role in your own quick the minds, because
Absolutely.
because you will be then drawn by like by the knowledge that's like, oh, stage 4 cancer means death, so
Yes.
therefore
Is
your
death.
belief will dead, and it will automatically
Exactly.
accelerate the process. And so that's why
Hmm.
the Chinese, when it comes to like a loved one, especially a
Hmm.
grandmother who has like a terrible disease, they will choose not to
To
tell them.
tell.
So the movie is
Exactly.
about like the family wants to say bye bye to the grandma, because
Hmm.
they know like she has this, but she doesn't know.
Uh-huh.
So they create this fake wedding where like all the family needs to go to China, because some of them are living in New York and Japan and all of this. And then they create
Wow.
this farewell excuse, a fake wedding, so that they can say bye to the grandmother, and the grandmother doesn't know, right?
Wow.
And then this is a true story, right? And then ultimately the grandmother was told that she has stage 4 cancer, she will probably live a couple months.
Yeah.
She ended up living like a decade or something like that.
Wow.
The
But
whole
that's it.
meanwhile not knowing that she has that, thinking
Yeah.
that she's healthy actually.
Yeah.
And it's just like the power of, like, it just speaks to the power of our minds. Actually, we have a
Totally.
power that is untapped,
Yes.
that actually even have the power to probably just heal ourselves from many things,
Oh, totally.
if we just like, are more conscious of that power. But
Exactly.
many times we are not.
Yeah. Well, because we've been educated otherwise. We've been educated to take a pill when there's a headache or you've got
Hmm.
cramps, or and that takes away from the power that we
Hmm.
have with really the intelligence of our body, because our body has that intelligence and our mind carries that intelligence. So where you bring your intention is what it will grow. So if you're bringing your intention and your attention to dying, that it's going to happen. What's that study that Japanese, I always forget his name, but the study with the water.
Mm. The water and the rice.
The water and the what, sorry?
The rice.
I can't remember. There's a rice thing as well, but it's the one where he labels water love, and
Hmm.
then another fear, and then I think he either
Mm.
speaks into the water, and you can see
Yeah.
the crystallization of the water.
Yeah.
And the one with love is these beautiful geometric
I think it's
snowflakes.
called Masaru Emoto.
Yes, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And the
I
one with
think he's
fear is
seen
like all distorted, right? And so if
he's
that can happen
seen
in water, imagine what's happening
distortion,
in your body. Yeah.
molecular changes, because of studies that he's done on, speaking to the water, like saying
Yes.
um things like "you disgust me," and that changes the molecular level of the water, and
Yes,
you can see that
totally.
love and gratitude, and the molecular level being like, great,
Hmm.
good. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And if you're like 80% water, imagine, like the
that's true. Yeah.
information that we're
Yeah.
fed, a lot of the
Mm.
fear that we're fed through the news, a lot of the fear that we're fed through
Mm.
people's conversations or leaders' conversations, that imagine the impact that it's doing to your body. So that again, it goes
Mm.
back to like really spending that time with yourself and honoring and loving. For me, I bless the water that I drink all the time. I
Mm.
infuse it with my love before I take a sip.
Mm.
The same thing with my food. It's
Mm.
and these are practices that we, like our ancestors, used to do all the time. Like everything lived with intentionality before power came into place, and then life started becoming super fast. And as things are fast, you cannot be intentional as much as you try. People are
Mm.
just trying to keep up with their bills. They're trying to keep up with their kids. They're trying to keep up with their health, and we're just constantly at the effect of everything. So there's no remembrance of the intentionality. And for me, intentionality is everything. How you intend something is everything.
Mm. So I'm just looking at the clock, and I want to be
Hmm.
respectful of your time. You have a kind of a hard stop soon,
I do. It's Mother's
and
Day here.
Oh,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
it's weird how we
Is
have
it
like Mother's Day, like in Europe is different, and in
Yeah,
America is
it's
different.
different in different parts of the world. In Costa Rica, it's today. Yeah, I know. It's
so
cool.
today, right? So it's because I think in some countries it's like Sunday usually, but
Yeah.
it's
And I think
in
Canada
Costa.
already had Mother's Day, I believe.
Yeah, wasn't
Yes,
like
it was
in
Yeah,
May.
May or
May,
something. Yeah.
in May.
like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
second Sunday of May. It
yeah.
was
Well,
Mother's Day.
every day is Mother's Day, is Father's Day, is Valentine's Day. That's the way I look at it. Like we should be celebrating every
I
day.
agree.
You
I
know.
agree.
Yeah.
I
If
agree
we
with
were
that. I agree with
celebrating,
that.
we wouldn't have time for any of these things. Imagine we were celebrating
Yeah.
every day, you know, like that would,
Mhm.
that's really what life can be, is a celebration,
Celebration.
you
Yeah.
know?
So
Yeah.
I like to close off the podcast with one reflection about,
Mm.
or again, just COVID-19 once again, because yesterday I was talking to had a picnic in a park with friends,
Oh,
and we
nice.
talk about like one of us was like, I don't know, like we can travel now because there are places that we can travel now in Canada, like Europe, for example,
Uh-huh.
and different destinations that are starting to appear. And one
Yeah.
of the friends like, I don't know, but I'm so concerned about like traveling right now because
Uh-huh.
COVID and the risk of COVID. And one of my friends, she talks things as she sees them, right? So she's like, but like right now, and because you can check this right now, we have 423 active COVID-19 cases right now as of like August
Mm-hmm.
14,
Mm-hmm.
and that's out of in Ontario, and that is
Mm-hmm.
at a population of 14.5 million in
Mm-hmm.
Ontario,
Yeah.
and recovery rate is about 90 to 95% people
Yeah.
that got it.
Mm-hmm.
So really, like when you compare that to other things, like the danger of you getting hit by a car,
Oh,
and COVID-19 is not
totally.
the only disease. So many diseases that there's no
Oh,
cure for.
yeah.
Then you start to wonder, it's like are like is this a little bit hyped up then? Like
Yeah.
like
It is. Exactly.
is this overly hyped? Like I know
Yeah.
there's a risk. It's a disease.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody can deny that, and people are dying. Sure,
Yes.
but there are many
Exactly.
other diseases.
Mm-hmm.
But what really worries me about COVID is not my danger right now. Am I gonna get it? Am I not gonna get
Uh-huh.
it? People are gonna get it. My concern about COVID-19 is what will happen afterwards as
After.
a result of that.
Mm.
Because
Yes.
we talked about our topic today was human trafficking,
Yes.
and human trafficking happens as a result of a disbalance, societal disbalance, where there's a disparity of people that who are very powerful and rich, and then people who are very very poor. The
Mm-hmm.
people that get trafficked, like the
Yes.
children. A lot of people get abstracted, like subtracted or removed from their countries, and then
Yes.
sold all around the world. My concern right now is the worsening of our current societal problems like human trafficking,
Yeah.
getting worse in the
Yeah.
coming years because of this hit that we have received from this disease, which
Mm-hmm.
I think has been overly hyped up.
Yeah.
But that's like when people talk about like, oh, COVID-19, what is my biggest worry? Just
Mm-hmm.
like in 9/11 when it happened, what happened in 9/11, like what, I don't know how many, I forget how many thousands of people, but it was just like a number of people that when you compare that to like the millions of people that die in the wars that were justified
Way
because of
more.
9/11,
Yeah.
what 9/11 is not actually, it's a tragedy,
Yeah.
but the biggest tragedy is what 9/11 actually made, uh,
Caused.
allowed to happen. And for me, that's the biggest worry about COVID-19. It's not our
Yeah.
present situation, but the result of what did to us
Mm-hmm.
as a human race, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, just looking at the economy, and the impacts that COVID has had on the economy, and businesses shutting down and businesses minimizing, you know, their exposure in terms of like uh, storefronts and things like that. It's like it's remarkable when you look at the numbers and the percentages of the hit that's happening on the economy. Um, that always leads to certain impacts, and human trafficking is one of them, unfortunately. So I think it is a valid, um, it's a valid concern to have. And I'm careful with my language again, because I don't want to bring it forth as a concern, but it's really an opportunity. The way that I see this, especially right now, it is an opportunity for people to bring their awareness here, for people to start to pay attention, to start to look for, what are the symptoms, of, your community, or, people trafficking humans. Really start to look at, because these are one of the things that, unfortunately go up with situations like this.
Mm,
um, and the economy plays a massive role within this industry. But what's exciting right now is, like, we've never had conversations the way that we are having conversations right now. And there's
mm,
so much more, like,
mm,
this has been a topic I know for a few people in my life. But it's been so, not undercover, but we haven't really shared much about it. It
mm,
hasn't really caught my eye to the level that it is right now. And I know that it's doing the same for other people. And awareness is number one, and getting involved in this conversation, because the more people that we're able to include into this conversation, the more of a difference we can start to formulate. Because the truth is,
mm,
I don't know what the answer is
mm,
fully. you know I don't know what exactly is going to make the difference, but I know that I want to be part of that conversation, to be in the discovery of it. And now I'm looking to join as many meetings as
mm,
possible around these conversations. And I don't know when you're launching this podcast, but August 22nd, there is a
mm,
march in Nathan Phillips Square in Toronto. um,
mm,
and I highly recommend, that Norman, Thierno, you go and
Hmm.
bring people with you, and those listening, if if this ends up getting out there in
mm,
time, that is really extend this invitation, because your listening makes the difference. I know right now people are like, oh, I'm not sure what to do, so I'm not doing anything, you know
mm,
but your next step is to get into the conversation, is to start to do your research, is to start to take a look at this whole world, because the information is starting to get out there.
mm. Yeah, no, I was gonna ask you, but you answered this question, I think, right now.
Hmm.
Mm,
Is what can people do to contribute? I think you said
yeah.
already what people can do. Are there other things that people could do? Like, are there like large organizations that are doing good that people may consider joining, or do you suggest people to look for grassroots groups, or
Hmm.
individually, or should people be writing to like their leaders, to the politicians? What are some other things that you think, if you think is effective, that people should be doing to help?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of the political side, I'm not entirely sure who we write to just yet. Um, and for myself, what I'm looking at is, like, really, Instagram has been a big resource for me when it comes to connecting with other people that are sharing the information, and that have, either charity organizations or establishments that they use, um, in not just getting the word out there, but also protecting people from human trafficking. I'm just trying to think of some of the people that I follow right now. Um, but maybe I can send them to you, and you can, I don't know where
Sure.
you, yeah, and you can, that,
Hmm.
I recommend following these people to learn more.
Hmm.
And yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's really, for me right now, that's the next step, is to start like, get yourself educated. And once you get yourself educated, you're going to know, because there's going to be people that get themselves educated that are in government, and that are going to see certain actions to take there, and you can start
Mm,
to share that way. There are
mm,
peelers, like myself, around sexual energy, and
mm,
for me, I'm really looking at ways to bring tantra to as many people as well, because this is
mm,
all an imbalance of sexual energy. That's what it is right now. It's like the
mm,
planet, we have this imbalance, and it's been a long time. So that's part of my work, and I think it's happening on different realms, and based on who you are, and how you operate and see the world, you're going to find different routes for that. So my number one thing is, get into conversation, begin to do your research. This, as much as people feel like this does not affect them,
mm,
I guarantee you that it does in some way. And
mm,
turning a blind eye to it is just, I mean, I could say this for myself, but it doesn't. It goes against the integrity at the level of ourselves.
Hmm.
So yeah.
so with that, I wanna thank you, Farah, for joining us in this episode. I
Mm,
just want to be mindful of the time.
yes.
I certainly have learned a lot.
Mm.
The conversation we have with you has been, I think, Tiana probably agree with this, that this is like probably one of our best episodes that we
Oh, it's
had.
so
Just
cool.
basically on the
Definitely.
quality, the intensity,
Mm,
and just like the vast
The
knowledge you have, and not just about human trafficking, but all the things you share about twin flames and the
mm-hmm.
rituals and all of those energies. And so it's been great. And so I want to thank you. And Tierno, do you have any questions left
No,
over that
I'm
you want to
waiting
say?
for Farah's podcast now.
No, I,
You
I I
know?
definitely I
It's
definitely would like to have you back, Farah. Like I
yes.
said,
Oh,
like I have a friend I told you about who you remind me a lot of.
that would be
And
cool.
I
I
think
would
if
love
we
that.
were to get you and him uh,
Hmm.
in the same podcast episode, will be quite interesting.
That
I
would
I
be
think
think that
fun.
one will take 3 hours.
Let's
it may have to.
let's do it. Let's do it. I really like Norman. Thank you for that acknowledgement. So much. I know for me that this is a heavy conversation. It's a heavy topic, and I'm really looking to bring light to it. And so,
Hmm.
thank you for the platform and for creating this conversation and just the space that the two of you have been like. This is, like I said, it's a heavy conversation, but it was really beautiful to have it with the two of you. And what I really want to leave people with is, yes, there's dark to it, but more than ever there's an opportunity for the light. And I do trust that this is going to it's going to be one of the most beautiful healing um, it's going to be one of the most beautiful healing experiences for our entire planet. And for that, I'm just really, really excited. So thank you for having me. Thank you for involving me. Um, and thank you for the work that you're doing, the both of you, and just like sharing who you are authentically with the rest of people, which may open up other ways of thinking.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And yeah, until next time.
Yes, super cool. Ciao.
Bye.